The tips that we're going to go over in this video could save you from financial disaster of buying a home in Florida. And I've got a lot of experience in this. I've been in real estate for 18 years here in Florida, and I've seen people make terrible mistakes and then, bring us in to try to fix it. And I want you to learn from other people's mistakes so that you don't have to go about the same fate. So let's jump right into it. Now, the first big tip that I have for you is a little counterintuitive because there's some good deals that are possible if you buy this type of property. However, the risks are severe. And I'm referring to buying a foreclosure kind of at the county court, the courthouse steps. And that is a risky endeavor. Now, what am I referring to? When a property goes through foreclosure, there are proceedings that happen at a county level, and eventually that property, if everything goes according to plan, would come up for foreclosure, and that is when the plaintiff, who is the bank, gets the opportunity to then sell that at the county court steps, or they can take the property back, and that would become an REO, foreclosure, real estate owned by the bank. So in that process, there are a lot of very sophisticated, very savvy investors. And here is a story about a not so savvy investor of what happened in this situation. So I got a call from a past client of mine and said, I have a friend who made a terrible mistake. Asked what that terrible mistake was, and she had mentioned that he decided that he wanted to invest in real estate in Southwest Florida. He knew that these foreclosures were potentially a really good opportunity, and so he went about going and registering online and setting up a profile. You can do all that. Anybody can do that. And he decided to bid on some of those properties. Well, come to find out, he bid on this beautiful home that was in a good location in Southwest Florida, and the price was extraordinarily good, and the bank was willing to sell it. They didn't have a bid that was restricted. And so he won this auction, was very excited about it, and this was going to be his start down real estate investing. And so after he won that auction, he went to the property, and come to find out that he had relied on information from Google Maps, Google Street View, and in that Google Maps, Google Street View, the property looked pretty nice. Like the home looked really nice. Well, fast forward to him going to drive by the property, and it had burned down. So all of the data that he was using was old data that was stored in Google Maps, and he didn't actually drive by the property and see it. And so he purchased a property, what he's thinking is his beautiful single-family home, and in fact, it's a burned down property, really lot value only. That is a crazy mistake that, you certainly don't want to make. But in these foreclosure auctions, there are other risks that are there that are not as obvious. So IRS tax liens, HOA liens, there's a lot of things that do not disappear with that foreclosure. So you need to do title work. You need to have a lot of preparation, and you need to be able to see everything you can about the property without trespassing. And so there's just a lot of risk there, and it typically has to be a cash purchase. So for most people, it's not a good idea to play in that game of sharks, because you can get burned quite easily. All right, next up on our properties to avoid list is something with exorbitant HOA fees. Now, here in Florida, we have a significant number of homeowners associations, probably more than any other state. I don't know that factually, but just based on how many are around, that would be a good guess. Now, HOAs have their place, and they can be a good thing, but they can also be really soul-sucking, as far as rules and regulations, but they can also get into very high fees, and that's something that you need to be aware of, because even if you're the type of person that says, hey, I'm going to pay cash for this property, you still would have to, you're subject to the HOA fees. And I have never in my entire career seen a trend where HOA fees go down, they go up. So you got to look at this as the never-ending mortgage. You can't just pay off HOA fees forever. They continue to exist, and they continue to go up. Now, here is how crazy some things can get. I did a search for this video and come to find there are actually 6 properties available for sale on the market today where their HOA fees are over $100,000 per year. Some of them are even higher. Some of them are more than $10,000 per month. And so these fees, obviously those properties are going to be luxury properties, and some of these buyers may not care, it may not impact them significantly. But the higher the HOA fees, a lot of times the less people are willing to pay for properties because they just have to factor that into their costs. So in general, I do not recommend getting into a community with exorbitant HOA fees and just an outrageous amount of amenities, because those take a lot of upkeep, and that upkeep becomes your responsibility. Now, next on our list, this is controversial because when people think Florida, they think beaches. They think they want to be on the beach. But I'm going to say in general, you need to be aware and careful of homes in a flood zone, in a special flood zone, because when the inevitable hurricane does come by and storm surge comes, that could be a potential issue. And on top of that, when there's mandatory flood insurance, that does increase your monthly, your annual costs of ownership. Now, I say let's, be careful, because there are newer construction homes that are built up, that are planned, that plan accordingly, and maybe that's not such a bad thing. But the way that flood insurance has gone, those high risk areas tend to just have significantly high flood insurance. And with the whole flood policy 2.0 that the federal government has put out, eventually those premiums are just going to be high for everybody who is in a special flood zone. So if you don't want to do that, there are plenty of areas in Florida, here in Southwest Florida too, that are outside of a special flood area. All right, next on our list. In general, you want to avoid purchasing a home that is wood frame construction. And I say that for several reasons. There are homes that are what we call stick built in Southwest Florida. Not a significant amount of them, but there are even luxury homes that are built that way. Now, the deal here is that number one, you want concrete block because it's going to do a couple of things. Number one, from a wind perspective, it is amazing at withstanding wind. Think, you're kind of building this fortress with concrete block walls and a roof with hurricane straps on it. That's a lot better than wood frame. It just holds up to the wind better. Number two, from an insulating perspective. So concrete block does a great job of keeping the heat out, the cool in. And so this is a really big deal in Southwest Florida. And then also on top of all of this, wood frame construction is going to cost more from an insurance perspective. So your annual insurance is going to be significantly more if it's a wood frame home versus a concrete block home. And one final note, termites do exist in Florida, and so wood frame obviously is going to have a higher susceptibility to termite damage, and so it's something that you want to be careful. Now, I do want to say that even concrete block homes are built with wood trusses, furring strips, etc. So there is wood in those homes, so termites can still be an issue there. But in general, you're going to be looking at a wood frame home is going to have potentially bigger issues when it comes to termites. All right, last but not least, this one has become a bigger issue in more recent years, and ever since they had the collapse of the Champlain South Towers on the east coast of Florida, the entire state of Florida has really come into play to say, hey, we've got to do something to make sure that older condominiums are up to code, that they have that the buildings are secure, so we don't have any kind of tragic issues like we did with the Champlain Towers. And so for that reason, older condo buildings are something that typically you may want to strongly consider avoiding. I'm not saying you shouldn't, because a lot of them are in great, locations on the beach, but you just need to be aware of what you're getting into. There are a lot of additional requirements that these older builders have to go through. They have to go through intensive inspections. They have to make sure that they have the proper reserves in place so that they can handle any of the big structural issues, roofing, any of the fixes that had to come from that inspection. And they also have to make any fixes to the building by the end of this year. And so what we've seen is a significant amount of assessments being placed on the existing owners. If the buildings need to get fixed, who do they go to? They go to the existing owners. And so if you are looking at an older condominium condominium building, especially one that is over 3 stories tall, you're going to want to make sure that you do the proper due diligence to see that the building has done everything they need to do for the new codes that are going into place, the new laws and regulations that are going into place. Now, this video has been a little bit different than my usual videos. I usually talked about what we should buy, but I really think that these tips, when you listen to them, will help you have a more stress-free ownership for many years to come with Florida real estate. Now, there are certain areas that we want to go to because there's a lot of growth in those areas. If you have interest in those growth areas, me and my team would be happy to help. Please reach out. The information is in the comments below. Always like the video, subscribe to the channel, and as always, thank you so much and have a blessed day.